Hi everyone. Today I'm joined by Hannah Lawrence, one of our incredible volunteers here at the PMDD Project. Hannah supports our partnerships team and is a passionate advocate for the PMDD community. She's been open about her own experiences of navigating PMDD in the workplace and has used those challenges to drive meaningful change, facilitating awareness training within her organisation and helping others better understand the realities of living and working with PMDD. Hannah's not only a brilliant ambassador for our community, but also a shining example of how sharing personal experiences can inspire real progress. I'm so excited to have her on the podcast today to talk about her journey and what needs to change to make workplaces more supportive for those with PMDD. Enjoy. Hi, Hannah. Thank you so much for joining us on the Monthly Truth.
Hello, I'm very excited to be here.
Same. So you're obviously one of the volunteers and someone with PMDD. So really, really excited to have you on the podcast. And as someone who has PMDD, I want to start off by asking you, how would you describe PMDD?
I would describe there's a few ways I see it actually. I think that it's something that you once you know that you have it, it's something that you've got no you don't you feel like you've got no control basically over your brain. I think for me when it's bad, because I have good months and bad months, despite if it's going to be a bad month, despite actually, in the lead up when you're feeling good, doing everything you can, so exercising and doing all the things that make you feel good, it's almost for me like this dark cloud or something that is controlling me just comes over, and all of the good kind of building blocks that you've done for that month and planning or whatever you're going to do, it just crumbles. Um, and Yeah, it's you just feel out of control, basically, and it sucks.
Yeah, it really does. The dark cloud is like a really common thread with people that I talk to because it's so true. It's like no matter what you do, it's going to come and it's going to take over and it's just going to completely, dictate your every thought and feeling. So, yeah, I totally get that. That's a good way of describing it. Um, can you share a little bit about your own personal PMDD journey?
Yeah, so I think for me, I got a diagnosis back in 2023, so just a couple of years ago now. And I was thinking about this the other day. I think that when I got that diagnosis, it was good in the sense that you can kind of pinpoint, you can put all your symptoms associated to a name, and you can think, right, actually I'm not losing my mind, like there is a name to this, and that can give a bit of relief and make you basically feel like you're not losing it. Um and I think that when I kind of became, if I look back on my life, I think it was probably always there, and I've always struggled. Like in my teenage years, like when I got that diagnosis, it was, oh my God, like all of these situations started coming up, like how I'd react, or certain situations and in life, whatever it may be. And I'd be like, oh my God, maybe that was PMDD, and I didn't realize because I wasn't in tune with my body. I was much younger. I didn't look after myself probably. It's probably going out too much and all of that. But anyway, I think as I got older, I realized that I didn't want to pull up with it anymore. And I started to realize there was a bit of a pattern. And I think I give credit to one of my friends actually and my partner, because one of my friends, I would voice note her, didn't realize this, but at the same time, probably every month, saying the same symptoms and all of that. And she was kind of like, oh, this isn't, you can't. I remember she said to me, how long, if this is affecting your life, which it was, personal and, professional, like you can't go on like this. And then I met my now husband, who I've been with for like 4 years, I think, 4 or 5 years. And I think once I got into a relationship and you can't hide yourself in a good way, he then started to be like, Hannah, this is happening the same time every month. And then that was kind of what I needed, really, a friend and a partner to be like, right, you need to go and get a diagnosis, basically, and then see what we can do after that.
And what would you say, if you don't mind me asking, are the main symptoms that you tend to experience? Obviously, every month is different, but what are the main ones that you sort of struggle with?
So for me, when it was at its worst, um, I was, and the way I was describing it to a friend is like it was almost like a switch. That was how I would describe it to friends. So I'm quite an outgoing person, like in my work. I think people wouldn't recognize me in the sense that it literally felt like a switch had gone off and my personality had changed. So I went from being outgoing and confident and speaking and all of that stuff to almost just having no like emotion, like that emoji that is just like the face is like just
Yeah.
nothing was, it was awful. And that made me, when it was bad, not want to do anything, and that's scary for me, but for my partner as well to see. So there was that in terms of the mood drop, which would last a week, sometimes longer. And then also I used to get extreme bloating, but when I say extreme, um, I couldn't put my clothes on, which obviously makes you feel 10,000 times worse, and just awful headaches, really, really bad headaches. But I think the main thing for me, I had lots of the symptoms, the insomnia as well, but it was the mood shifts that were really quite scary.
Yeah. And well, it's so varied for everyone, isn't it? But it's interesting that you touch on the physical symptoms as well, because I don't think they're talked about enough, but they're so debilitating. That bloating I can really resonate with, and that has an impact on you and the mental symptoms as well. So yeah, it's a real slog. I totally get that. And how did you kind of touched on it briefly, but how did your experience of PMDD then start to impact your professional life?
Yeah, so I mean, having PMDD is probably not any good time to have it, but it probably came at the worst time when my symptoms were at their worst because I just started working at the company that I'm at now. So it was a completely new company. So having to learn, it's effectively a new language, and all the should be excitement, but pressures that come with that. And it was, yeah. So starting a new company where you're meant to be networking, joining everything, socializing, and I was the complete opposite. And of course, that was then getting in my head more because I was thinking I can't speak. Brain fog was a huge other symptom that I forgot to say. Like literally would not be able to speak. I'm laughing now, but it wasn't funny at the time. And yeah, so that was impacting my work then. And then again, when I started realizing and got that diagnosis, I could then be like, right, I've got this condition. And this didn't happen overnight, but it was looking at my work calendar and saying, can I actually do this in, meeting, whatever it may be, this particular time of my cycle. So it was impacting work in that sense where I started to have to be like, right, I need to take ownership of my calendar here, which I'm lucky to be able to do. But of course, probably like all of us, if there's some event being planned, they're not going to change it because Hannah's in her luteal phase. And I have to go ahead with it. So that was tough because I was again doing presentations and public speaking that I enjoyed to do, but I wasn't performing my best. I was Hannah, minus 50%, and yeah, not good. So, yeah, just didn't feel like I was performing, which I wasn't for those particular, days or week, whatever it was.
Yeah, and I think you get in your head as well, and you think, oh my God, everyone's so aware of the fact that I'm not performing as well as I can, and you start to
Yeah.
doubt your ability to work when actually, really, you got the job for a reason. Of course, you can do it, but
Yeah.
you can't just well, you can sometimes, but you can't just cancel a meeting last minute if you don't feel like you're able to do it. You can't just get out of big presentations if they've been planned for ages. Like, it's really hard to navigate it. And so at what point did you decide to speak up about PMDD at work? And I suppose what gave you the confidence to do that as well?
Yeah, so I think so it was just after my diagnosis. So I again, I was new to the company. I had joined the women's kind of networking group or women's group, and that covered lots of different topics, not just kind of hormone related, but women in tech and leadership and all of that. And I remember I just got the diagnosis and I was on a call, and they were trying to think about any future topics to do, basically planning the roadmap to what events they wanted to do. And I remember being sat here actually, and I was like, do I ask or mention why this came over me? I don't know if anyone knows what PMDD is, because I don't know what made me do that. I don't know. I think I just thought, and this call went silent. I remember that. And then somebody said, oh, actually, my friend has suffered with PMDD. No one else really knew what it was. Um, anyway, all of that to say, zooming forward, that's when I first mentioned it. So there was a webinar that was they brought somebody external to talk about it from like a physical I can't speak biology, kind of talking about the brain and all of that stuff. And then I put myself forward to basically talk about my symptoms along with the person presenting. And then what happened was the knock-on effect for that was a lot of women started reaching out to me saying, oh my goodness, like I have these symptoms. So but I don't actually remember what made me bring it up. I think because I just went through a crappy time and I was struggling with work and I was in that group, something in my brain must have just been like, surely there's someone else that's suffering, I guess.
Yeah, because it affects you so deeply as well in the workplace. That's where you spent the majority of your time. And like you've just said, it does impact you greatly. And
Yeah.
I'm sure it gets to a point where you kind of just you want to go, one, you want to go, I'm struggling with this and I need to be able to vocalize that in whatever capacity that may be. And two, like you've just said, surely there are other people that are feeling this way as well. And
Mm.
having the bravery to actually do that and voice it and represent the PMDD community, not just PMDD community, women's health as a whole, is a really amazing thing to do. And what kind of responses did you get then from your colleagues?
So yeah, I think it was what was really nice was when women started reaching out to me just to say, is it okay if if we speak and I can just hear about your experience and how you got a diagnosis? I remember being sat here actually and having so I've got a few screens and having my work, so my job, and then on the other side having these emails come through from women and basically just saying like, thank you so much for speaking up because it's led me to, and this is like a few months down the line, get a diagnosis, or it's led me to actually, yeah. So I was like doing my job, which I enjoy, but then obviously I was seeing these kind of emails come through and I was like, this feels like I'm doing something important and something that I'm making a difference. So yeah, it was a good, it was received well.
That's amazing, and it must feel good as well, and especially because it's so close to home, having your colleagues come out
Yeah.
and say they've managed to get a diagnosis through just
Mm,
you raising awareness is just knowing how difficult it is to get a diagnosis or knowing how many people are out there suffering in silence, not knowing what PMDD is. That
mm.
must feel really good knowing that you've helped quicken that process. Um, and you've also last week delivered a PMDD training presentation to your company, just talking all things PMDD, how to recognize it in the workplace, etc. What what were you wanting people to take away from that session?
Yeah, so I as we know, it's not well understood by many, and I think that there has been a huge change in recognizing menopause in the workplace. I think there's still a way to go, but I think this is another topic that, again, because I've seen the impact that it had, and those few women that have reached out to me or managers that have sent on that recording from the past to help people, I basically knew that there was more people that I could help. And I guess I just wanted to spread awareness and show the wider organization that we can talk about these topics. And you know I'm I had somebody else join me, actually, one of the people that reached out to me, which was amazing, which is a huge ask. And the fact that she did it and was vulnerable and shared her story was fantastic. And I thought that would be, yeah, I wanted to show people in the organization that there are people that are suffering. So there's me, but there's someone else here. And she was on the other side. She was sat on that webinar a few years ago. And now she's here, saying that she's better, she's got the help, and she was sharing her experiences. So I think all in all, normalizing it, and I'm quite. I've discovered that I'm quite passionate about. I don't know where it's come from, but in these like corporate companies that I work for, I just want to make, whether it's female hormones or anything, I just want to like humanize everyone and just make sure that everyone remembers that, we are human beings that are going to work, whether it's PMDD or any other, mental health thing that's going on. It's important that we talk about it. So, yeah, spreading awareness and making sure other people in the organization know that there is a support there, whether it is me, and this one other particular individual, but then obviously making everyone aware of your resources as well. So we printed those out, and the leaflet, so they're aware that there's support out there.
Because I suppose it's a couple of things. It's raising the awareness in the first place, making people realise what it is. And I suppose that
Mm.
then opens doors and eyes and conversations to there are other conditions that we can start talking about as well. But it also gives people the language, because I don't think, particularly in the workplace, I don't think people have the language to talk freely and openly about any health condition really, but not least women's health. And so by you openly talking about it, bravely talking about it, and they'll receive it warmly because they know you anyway, and sort of you having that connection will be really well received, I can imagine. It's giving them the tools and allowing them to go ask the questions, I suppose, and allowing them to go, actually, that really resonates with me because I'm sure my mum was feeling a certain way, or I'm sure my partner is da da da. I'm sure my colleague acts a certain way every month, and maybe this is why. Maybe we need to start supporting them. So, yeah, it's a really powerful thing to be able to do that. Not just for those that are struggling with PMDD, but for everyone, to know what it is.
Yeah, and that's another thing I was going to say as well, is that the raising awareness. But I'm because I've seen what Isaac, my partner, has gone through, in the sense that it's difficult for your partner or your friend, or your mum and dad, whoever's living with you, watching you. For some people, your personality changes. That one thing that I really wanted to get across on that particular day was educating, even if you might not have PMDD yourself, but somebody, like you say, like a loved one might. And if somebody went home and, said, oh, actually, these symptoms, these are really familiar, and they go to their loved one or friend, and that's then going to help them. So I think, yeah, I was quite wanting to, make sure that everybody was well informed, not just kind of directing it at people that might think they've got a hormonal condition going on.
Definitely, definitely. Do you think since starting talking about PMDD, you've noticed any differences in the way your peers deal with your PMDD, whether that be Isaac or your colleagues? Have there been any surprising reactions as well that have stood out to you since opening up about PMDD?
I think what was really lovely the other day actually was when I work in a global team. So my manager's basically, he's in America. And so my colleagues are kind of scattered everywhere else. And they knew it was happening, and I sent them, the dial-in details. One of them actually attended, even though it was like 5 a.m. his time. So I was very touched with that, I know. And then it turns out actually that I'd forgotten about this. Um, I spoke to him afterwards, and he said, oh, he knows exactly what this is. His partner has been diagnosed with it. And it's just, yeah, I was like, wow, God, so he was chatting to me and say having sympathy. I don't want sympathy, but understanding, the reality of it. But in terms of other reactions, I what was nice was when I spoke to my team afterwards, online, because there's a recording, and they were told that, somebody else had listened to it. My team is full of men, and it was so nice. Like, my manager was just chatting about, he's got his wife, and just how important it is to understand, what's going on, and educate yourself. And it just created this really nice conversation that, as a team, we never speak like that. Um, and there were so many different stories coming out from different men in the team. Um, So anyway, it's yeah, I think it's nice, and I think that it's got people hopefully to realize that they can talk about these topics at work, and there's we need to this stigma should hopefully disappear
Yeah, because there is
one day.
stigma, definitely. But
Yeah.
it's by the sounds of it, people are becoming more comfortable with talking about it. But that only happens because people like you go out and represent the community and break those barriers in the first place. Um, so I think that's, yeah, it's just amazing. And it sounds also like people genuinely want to know, like the fact that your manager spoke to you about it and was opening up about his partner. People genuinely want to learn about it as well, and that must feel really good. And it's promising for the workplace in general. Like how important do you think, I think it's incredibly important, but how important do you think workplace understanding and like the flexibility is for people living with PMDD?
Yeah, no, I think it's huge, and I think that that was one of the things we spoke about on the day actually, which was kind of putting um areas at work, whether it's kind of chill out areas or providing, whether it's cool packs or fat or whatever it may be. And I think, yeah, it's super important for work to not just have desks and have areas whereby you can have a moment and relax. I mean, there was talk about I forgot what they were calling it, some kind of wellness corner or something, or they're going to do something in the future for women that are breastfeeding and who, yeah, I didn't really realize this because I don't have a child. But there's a lot of things that I didn't realize with breastfeeding. If you go back to work, you have to like, it's not, you don't just stop breastfeeding basically. So the company are looking at creating areas for good reasons. And then that sparked
Amazing.
a discussion the other week around, okay, well, if we're doing it for these very good reasons, why can't we do it for people with whether it's menopause or these PMDD symptoms where some of them are quite similar? Like yeah, when you're boiling hot one minute and then freezing cold the next, or whatever it may be. So yeah, I think it's really important that, like you say, we spend so much of our lives at work. We need to have like, yeah, basically an environment that we feel like we can relax in and recuperate and not just be robots.
Yeah. And yeah, and humanizing it as well, like you mentioned earlier. There was one example of a business that I was speaking to recently, and they are a menopause-friendly workplace. And I think menopause, you touched on this earlier, but I think menopause is like the blueprint of where PMDD should be recognized and represented and supported. I would love to follow in their footsteps, but this business in particular was QVC, I think they were called, and what they do in their workplace is they have like a care bag. So if anyone during menopause is really struggling in the workplace and they're having hot flushes, for example, or they leak, then they have an outfit that they can change into. And I think that's just taking it like one step ahead of just ticking a box and going, yep, we support and we recognize menopause. They actually are looking into, well, how is their work life impacted by it? And they're creating this flexible and, I don't know, inclusive environment. And I think that's, yeah, that's a forward thinking way of doing it. I think a really important thing to do because then people, that community feel like they actually feel seen and supported.
Mm.
So, okay, then looking back, if you could tell your past self, speak to your past self, the version of you who was really, really struggling before she knew what was going on, what would you tell her?
Oh, that's a good question. What would I tell her? That there is help out there. There is support. At the time, I really didn't. Yeah, I didn't realize. I didn't even know what it was. And that the symptoms that you are experiencing, they it will get better, basically, in the sense that you can. And everyone's unique, but there is treatment out there. There is ways in which you can make lots of different lifestyle changes, and that you're not always going to feel so crap. um, and that people do want to help and talk about it. Again, I didn't realize that any of this existed really. So that's what I would say.
Well, that is important though. Like, I think for anyone listening as well, there is hope. I think a lot of the time it can feel, because it's so relentless and cyclical, that it can sometimes feel like, oh my God, this is never going to end. But yeah, like there is definitely hope. And even changes like you going into a workplace and talking about PMDD is a huge step from where we were a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, however many years people have been struggling with PMDD for a long, long time. And I think we're making big progress, which is in turn going to make big changes, hopefully. So, yeah, I think that's nice. And finally, what do you have one piece of advice for someone that is struggling with PMDD right now? You know, they may be struggling day to day or in the workplace. Do you have any specific strategies or adjustments that have helped you cope?
Yeah, I would say, what would I suggest? That I think definitely for me is I started writing things down, and I've never done this before, but as I started kind of writing down like how I was feeling and the symptoms. And again, I think that's just like a sanity thing in the sense that you can map that onto this is just for now, like this isn't my identity. And again, going back to what I was saying, it will pass. I think any other tips as well, I think something that's helped me a lot is sticking to an exercise regime. I think, but I also made changes, and everyone's bodies is different. But for me, I went from kind of high impact, high stress, I suppose, to low impact. So I moved to swimming, and Pilates, and I suppose walking. Um, the thing I will say about that is also don't be too hard on yourself. So like, I do exercise regularly, but sometimes I go, no, I can't be bothered in that particular week. So don't feel like you're a bad person if you don't keep up with it. Do try go for a walk. Again, my partner will say, Hannah, you don't do that all the time. He has to encourage me to go see the sunlight. But I think just be kinder to yourself as well, because as soon as you start, and I've done it, you start being horrible to yourself and, just being nasty to yourself, you can kind of spiral. But yeah, those are the main things.
So do you think it's interesting, the exercise point? Do you think you've noticed a difference then from shifting from in the luteal phase, shifting from high intensity to low intensity? Do you think you have noticed a difference then with your symptoms?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've made quite a few over the, well, couple of years now. I've made quite a few changes. So like, I guess in terms of like food as well and everything like that. But I think with the exercise, I would say so. And I don't just do it in my luteal phase. So I say just swim and do Pilates, but that is, I used to run. And I think moving to low impact, I don't know, there's so much different research out there that you could, on both sides, but I think there is a link. I don't know, I'm not a doctor, on doing low impact and having, you're not raising your cortisol levels, you're not doing stress on your body. But there's so many, for me, it works.
Yeah, that's
Like
great.
moving to that. But I know for other people, going and lifting weights has helped for them. So it's all the sad thing is it's like it's all trial and error, isn't it? Yeah.
It is. That's the painful thing. It is trial and
Oh,
error. But that's so good that you've realised that works for you, though. And it makes sense as well, because having those high cortisol levels when you're already so stressed out, you want
yes.
to keep them to a minimum. But yeah, obviously it's different for everyone. But that's really good to know that it's worked for you. So no, that's a great piece of advice. Well, thank you so much for joining the podcast and for just sharing everything that you've done to help your PMDD, but to help others as well. It really is just amazing that you're representing the community and just being brave enough to talk about your experience, because it's helping so many people as a result. So yeah, just thank you so much for everything that you do.
No, thank you.
No worries. Okay, thank you.
Thanks.